Good morning.
Namaskar.
ॐ
सदाशिवसमारम्भाम् शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम्
सदाशिवसमारम्भाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे
वन्दे
गुरुपरम्पराम्
गुरुपरम्पराम्
ॐ
ॐ
सहना भवतु
सहना भवतु
सहनौ
सहनौ
भुनक्तु
Sahanau
भुनक्तु
Bhunaktu Saviriyam
वीर्यं
Brahmavahi
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा
Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma
विद्विषावहै
Vidvisavahi
शान्ति
Om
शान्ति
Shanti
शान्तिः
शान्ति शान्तिः
Om Tat Sat, Om Namah Shivaya. Good morning,
ॐ
everybody.
तत्सत् ॐ नमः
Good.
शिवाय गुड मॉर्निंग
So we had completed the 10th mantra of the third section. We are now on the 11th mantra. Tam yogamiti manyante
तां
Tam
योगमिति
Yogimiti
मन्यन्ते
Manyante
stiram indriya dharanam
Thiram Indriya
स्थिरामिन्द्रियधारणाम्
Dharanam
apramattattastada bhavati
अप्रमत्तस्तदा
Apramattastada
भवति
Bhavati
yogo hi prabhavyayo
योगो हि
Hi
प्रभवाप्यो
Prabhavapyayo.
Okay, so look at the words. Manyante, they consider tam sthiram indriya dharanam. Sthiram indriya dharanam, the steady posture, steady poise of the sense organs, yoga miti, to be yoga. And at that time, tada, at that time, bhavati, bhavati apramattaha. One should be alert at that time because yoga prabhava apyayo. Because yoga is prabhava, is subject to coming or subject to rising, and apyaya is subject to going away, subject to falling. So he's saying that at the time of this yoga, Nididhyasana yoga, you should be very alert because the mind can come and go. And when you read this mantra, you should actually be recalling the discussions we had in the chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. Because that whole chapter, chapter 6, is basically a commentary on these verses only, on these mantras only. So he says, I would request all of you all to please keep yourself muted so that, our recording is not disturbed. So, yogam iti manyante. This is said to be yoga. Okay, now which yoga is this? This is called Jnana Yoga or Jnana Samadhi or Nididhyasana. Remember that we are talking about Vedantic meditation, Nididhyasanam, where the mind is clearly recalling the teaching, clearly focusing on some ideas, on some mantras or some teaching which has happened. It is not the Samadhi of Yoga Sutra. And we say that what is the Samadhi of Yoga Sutra? Chitta Vritti Nirodha. What does that mean? What does Chitta Vritti Nirodha mean?
चित्त की सारी वृत्तियों को रोक देना.
चित्त की सारे वृत्तियों को रोक देना. Arresting all the thoughts. Okay. So which means what? The Samadhi referred to in the Yoga Sutra is a state of thoughtlessness. Okay. And from our point of view, we call this Andha Samadhi, blind Samadhi. Why? Because that yogi, he has, of course, been successful in arresting the thoughts. But there is no jnanam. Advaita jnanam is not there. Right? So remember that there is Advaita Avastha in the Yoga Sutra Samadhi. What does Advaita Avastha mean? The meditator, the process of meditation, and the object of meditation. right? That is not there. The meditator is not there. The process of meditation is not there. The object of meditation is not there. That is the definition of chitta vritti nirodha. There are no thoughts at all. There is no thinker, there is no thinking, and the object of thinking is not there. So it's called Advaita Avastha because there's nothing else. There is no second thing at all. And that is why in Yoga Samadhi of Yoga Sutras, you've often said that Triputi collapses. The three, these are the three: the meditator, the process of meditation, and the object of meditation. This Triputi, it collapses. It goes away in Samadhi. So Advaita Avastha is not there, but Advaita Avastha is there, but Advaita Jnanam is not there. How do you know Advaita Jnanam is not there? Because Yoga Sutras talk about Purvasha and Prakriti. Purvasha is separate, Prakriti is separate. It is very clearly, very cleanly Dvaitam only, and therefore Andha Samadhi. So this distinction we should know, that we are not talking about the Andha Samadhi of the Yoga Sutras. We are talking about the focused recalling of the teaching of Vedanta. Therefore, yoga miti manyante has to be understood as nididhyasana yoga or jnana samadhi yoga. And Shankara writes, etasyam avasthayam, in this jnana samadhi, in this nididhyasanam, what is the speciality? Avidya adhyaropena varjita swarupa. The meditator is avidya varjitaha, free from avidya. Avidya adhyaropa varjitaha, free from all the adhyasas, all the superimpositions caused by avidya. What are the superimpositions caused by avidya? You're all advanced students.
EMSC, body mind sense complex, identification with the body.
Exactly. In other words, the Panchakoshas or the Shariratrayam. These are the superimpositions. The Adhyasa caused by Avidya. So Avidya Adhyaropa means Shariratrayam and Panchakoshaha. And he says Avidya Adhyaropa Varjita Swarupa. He is free from the Panchakoshas and he is free from the Shariratrayam. So three bodies and Panchakoshas he does not take as himself. That's very important to understand. Doesn't mean that Panchakosha and three bodies suddenly vanish while you're in Jnana Samadhi. It is not. You disown them. You know that you are not the bodies. Okay. Note that this is the very basic idea that Shankaracharya is talking about, the very crux of the whole issue. In Jnana Samadhi, he is free from the Panchakoshas. He is free from the avidya adhyaropaha, superimpositions caused by avidya. But we should carefully remember here that in Sushupti Avastha as well as in the Yoga Samadhi of Yoga Sutras, we said there is Advaita Avastha. In that Avastha of Sushupti as well as Yoga Samadhi, remember that these Panchakosas are not present. Why? Because it is Advaita Avastha. There are no thoughts at all. The thought that I am the body is not present. The thought that I am the mind is not present. In Jnana Samadhi, the thought is what?
I am Brahman.
And if you want to talk about the Panchakoshas, you will say, I am not the Panchakoshas. The very, very subtle difference. In Jnana Samadhi, in Nididhyasanam, the thought is that I am not the Panchakosha. In Sushupti Avastha as well as Yogi Samadhi, the thought is not there at all. I am the body, thought is not there. It does not mean that that thought has been removed. That thought is only dormant because the moment you come out of samadhi, you go back to I am the body. Right? Okay. Remember that the rope snake, Rajju Sarpaha, how does it go away?
Light.
With light,
No.
this rope is seen and the snake is dismissed.
This snake is a rope thought. The Rajju Sarpa does not go away because of light. Light is the factor. But the Rajju Sarpa goes away because of with the jnanam that this is a rope, not a snake. And therefore remember, the Rajju Sarpa going away is not samadhi. Supposing there is, you are walking on this path. You know this example, right? You are walking on the dimly lighted path. And there is this rope lying on the road, and you are not able to see the rope properly. So you project a snake onto it. That is what is Rajju Sarpa. So there is a Rajju Sarpa in front of you. Now you go into Samadhi, let's say. You sit in front of Rajju Sarpa and you go into deep Samadhi for 1 hour. During that Samadhi, there are no other thoughts because Chitta, Vritti, Nirodha. So snake thought is also not there. But when you come out of the Samadhi, is that Rajju Sarpa going to be there or not?
Yes.
Yes.
It does not go away. The only way that rope snake will go away is when you get the knowledge that this is a rope, not a snake. So if you do not have jnanam, in nirvikalpa samadhi, as I said, there will be no snake thoughts. But when you come out of the samadhi, the snake will definitely be there. And that is why Yamaraj here says, during any meditation, there are going to be distractions. And you should remember what Krishna said. Yato yato nischarati. The mind goes up. Whenever it goes out, what is your job?
Bring it back.
Bring it back. This is the job of the mind. Therefore, in this meditation also, in this Nididhyasanam also, you will find that because you are engaged in transactions when you are not meditation, you will be reminded of all those roles. Your father role, your mother role, your son role, your daughter role, employee role, parent role, everything will be there. All these roles will constantly keep, intruding upon you. So, since what does happen? Because to do any transaction at all, you have to invoke the RC. The Ahankara has to be invoked. Even for eating, I am eating, the Ahankara is being invoked. For talking, I am talking. The Ahankara is being invoked. And therefore, in this meditative frame of mind also, because you are so used to Ahankara being invoked all the time, this is the time when you don't need that lower nature, that Ahankara. But Ahankara will poke its nose because it is there all the time. When you sit, when you try to put the Ahankara out of your mind, how? By invoking your higher nature as Brahman. When you say, I am Brahmasmi, the Ahankara will come and knock and say, hey, I am still here. Right? And therefore, Yamraj is saying, this is going to happen. But every time it happens, you have to pull back the mind back to your nididhyasana. So, one thing which all teachers say is when you start to sit for meditation, first give yourself an auto suggestion. Next 10 minutes, next 15 minutes, no anatma thoughts will come into my mind. Over a period of time, this works. And therefore, here, tam yogam iti manyate, remaining without that distraction of the anatma, when you are in nididhyasanam, that is called yoga. And this is what Yavraj says, tada. At that time of Nididhyasana. And you should supply at that time of Nididhyasana. Since the anatma distractions are a natural thing to happen, therefore, apramattaha bhavati. One should be alert. Why? Because yoga, prabhavav, apyayav. Because here yoga, that concentration, that focus of your mind will come and go. It is subject to coming and going. This is the law of nature. Therefore, you should be alert. The simple meaning is that during Nididhyasanam, try to ensure that no anatma thoughts come and disturb you. Easier said than done, but it has to be said. Okay, we look at the next mantra, we will chant. Please unmute yourself. Naiva vacha na manasa
नैव
वाचा न मनसा
praptum shakyo na chakshuषा
प्राप्तुं शक्यो
प्राप्तुं शक्यो न चक्षुषा
प्राप्तुं शक्यो
अस्तीति ब्रुवतोऽन्यत्र
अस्ति
इति ब्रुवतो अन्ये
कथं तदुपलभ्यते
कथं तदुपलभ्यते.
Okay, so look at the words. Praptum shakyaha, which means what? Can be grasped, can be understood. Praptum is literally can be obtained. Shakyaha can be. What are we talking about? That can be grasped. So that Atma, that Brahman, you have to supply. Brahman, ya Atma, Praptum Shakyaha, can be grasped. And when it is negative, na chakshusha, not through the eyes, na eva vachaha, not through the speech, na manasaha, not through the mind. And then katham tat upalabhyate, how can it be known? By anyatra bruvataha iti asti. That has to be understood carefully. How can katham tat upalabhyate? How can that atma be known? Anyatra, by someone other than the person who says bruvataha, the person who says iti asti, that Brahman exists. Okay, so it's a very nice little idea. Brahman cannot be grasped through the eyes, through the speech, through the mind. How indeed can that Brahman be grasped by someone who does not declare that Brahman exists? This is another way of putting it. So, a very important idea Yamaraj is talking about. Shraddha in Veda Pramana. What is Shraddha in Veda Pramana? Remember that Veda talks about things which are not available to your sense organs. For what is available to me through my Indriyas, I don't need the Veda, because the Indriyas will reveal that. But what about heaven? It's not available to me through the sense organs or the mind, and therefore there has to be a pramanam which I have to accept. So whatever Veda says that it is true, acceptance of that teaching is called Shraddha. And what will Veda show? Veda will show me through a sustained teaching that that Brahman is none other than myself. And once I come to that, then only the teaching is complete. But if I have to accept that Brahman is myself, the first step is what?
Accepting the Shastra or going to the Shastric words and Acharya.
I will try to put it this way. The first step to accepting that I am Brahman is to first accept that Brahman exists. And nothing else than Shastra can show you that Brahman exists. That is why the Shraddha and the Vedas is necessary. Because Brahman is not available to eyes or mind. How can you inquire into something about the existence of which you do not know? Right? If you want to inquire into something, you must first know that that thing exists. You cannot inquire into the existence of something which you do not know exists. And therefore, to inquire into Brahman, first Brahma Asmi. Brahman exists. This is necessary. And when you study systematically under a competent teacher for a sufficient length of time, you do your mananam, you do your shravanam, mananam, and nididhyasanam, then this provisional acceptance Brahman exists. Brahman Asti. That Brahman Asti changes to Brahma Asmi. I am Brahman. Asti is there. Asmi is I am. Therefore, Brahma Asti to Brahma Asmi, this is the journey. But to come to Aham Brahma Asmi, you have to first accept that Brahma Asti, Brahman exists. And that can come only through the teaching of the Veda. Therefore, the Veda has to be accepted as a Pramana. This is called Shraddha. That Shraddha will get converted to Jnana. Shraddhavan lavate Jnanam. That is the teaching of whom?
Krishna.
Lord Krishna. That also is borrowed from these verses. So this here is saying that unless you accept the Veda, you will not be able to even know that Brahman exists. Where is the question of inquiring into Brahman? And if you don't inquire into Brahman, how will you ever arrive at the conclusion that you are Brahman? And therefore he says, Brahma praptum na shakyaha. Brahman cannot be known through any indriya, any pramanam like vachaha, achakshuhu, all this, right? So these can be taken as generally any pramana in the universe, books and all that. Books and all can talk only about matter. They cannot deal with Brahman. All teaching in the universe, excepting Veda, is about matter. Only Veda deals with Brahman. So, na chakshusha. Chakshu represents all the sense organs. And asti iti bruhataha. This means the one who says Brahman exists, which means the Shraddhavan, one who has faith in the Veda. And this temporary faith in the provisional faith, you can call it. So when you say Brahman exists, you take it as yes, Veda is saying, so let me believe it. And from here I will inquire. Right? And Shankara says what? What do you know from the Shastram? You know from the Shastram that Brahman is Jagat Karanam. And therefore only Asti Eva. It's a slightly, a statement referring to logic. Every product has to have some creator. And therefore, if there is a Jagat, which I know there is a universe. And therefore, Shastra says, Jagato Moolam. Brahman is Jagat Karanam. And therefore, since the product exists, the Karanam must also exist. And Shankara gives a example. He says, whenever a Karyam is resolved into its Karanam, for example, the necklace resolving back into the gold, right? He makes a very valid point here. Karya pravilapanasya. Whenever a karyam This pravilapanam essentially is a technical word, shastram, which means a product resolving back into the karana, into the cause. So karyam pravilapanasya. Whenever a product resolves back into its cause, he says astitva, the existence, the isness, also goes back into the cause. Very subtle statement. We say the necklace exists, right? What does the necklace consist of? Two things: the existence principle and the nama rupa. The original vastu is there, the gold. So the gold exists and there is a nama rupa. So he says when the product, the necklace, is melted and goes back into the gold, it is not just that the nama rupa has been resolved, it is also that the existence of the necklace, borrowed existence of the necklace, has gone back into the karana, the gold. And similarly, at the time of pralayam, the existence of the jagat will necessarily have to go back into Brahman from which that existence was borrowed. And this is, he says, this is the reason why Brahman must exist. So when you imagine this, if you're doing a meditation on this, of course you have to do a slightly longer meditation. Like you have to go back to Tattvabodha, then you have to say all the gross elements resolve into subtle elements. And subtle elements, then you say Prithvi resolves into, for example, Prithvi resolves into Jalam, Jalam resolves into Agni, Agni to Vayu, and all that. First, the gross Prithvi, and then the subtle Prithvi. And finally, everything resolves into Akasha, and Akasha resolves into Avyaktam, which is Maya. Okay. Thus, the entire universe resolution, Pravilapana, can be visualized in several stages. What is it when it resolves into Maya? Finally, what has it resolved into?
It's Karanam.
It's Karanam. But remember, Maya does not exist without Brahman. So when it resolves into Maya, finally you say universe is resolved into Saguna Ishvara. You start with the elements and then slowly start with the Bhautikanis, go back to the Bhutanis, go back to Sukshma Bhutanis, go back to Avyakta Maya. And that Avyakta Maya you have to recall is always existing along with Brahman. That entity is called Saguna Ishvara. This particular prakriya is called Pravilapana Vicharaha. You meditate upon this. Therefore, the whole prapancha, the whole universe, does ultimately resolve into Brahman or Saguna Ishvara, but not directly. It goes through several intermediary steps. And that is why an important observation is made in this mantra. By Shankaracharya, of course. It's not there in the mantra. Shankaracharya makes an observation. He says every karana, every cause has two components: existence and namarupa. Right? So this is present in every karyam. Namarupa is there, existence is there. The cause has the namarupa in potential form. When the product comes, the product is manifested namarupa and it has borrowed existence from the karana. And what he is saying is at the time of the pravilapanam, when the necklace disappears into the gold, only the nama rupa disappears. But remember, the necklace has two components: nama rupa and borrowed existence. So when the Namarupa disappears, what happens to the borrowed existence? He says the existence of the Karyam gets transferred to the Karma, right? Thus, if you look at the whole sequence, at every stage, what happens? Namarupa disappears, but existence gets transferred to the Karma. So if there is a sequence of what we're talking about, gross Prithvi is being resolved into gross Jala, let us say, right? What happens? The existence of the Prithvi is transferred back to the Jala. So the Namarupa has disappeared, but the existence principle continues. And similarly, if you take it backwards, at each stage, the existence component of the product continues because it is getting transferred back to the Karanam. Only the Namarupa is getting dissolved. And this is the proof that, that Shankara says. Shankara says, this is Shastra supported logic. It is the logical proof that Brahman exists. Why? Because that existence principle is always there. You can go right back up to Sagana Ishvara. You will find that existence is only being transferred backwards, which means it continues. And therefore, he says, in this way, even by resolving the Jagat, you can trace it back to its ultimate cause, existence principle. And this has to be understood very carefully because one more thing he points out is that as each product resolves, the karanams become subtler and subtler. Where did we see this? The product, the karyam resolving into the karanam. Let us say karyam 1 resolves into karanam 1. Okay, so far so good. Now, karanam 1 resolves into its own karanam. So here it becomes karyam 2 resolving into karanam 3. Right? I'll give an example. Prithvi resolves into Jalam. Jalam resolves into what?
Agni.
Agni. Agni resolves into what?
Vayu.
Vayu.
Right.
So the Karanam
Fire.
for Prithvi is Jalam. The Karanam of Prithvi is Jalam. The Karanam for Jalam is Agni. If you remember Tattvabodha, the gunas belonging to Jalam, are they more or less than the gunas belonging to Agni?
There's one
Less.
additional
Less.
More.
Is
More.
one
Agni has
less.
higher.
It's less. Yeah.
One less, right? So the one which has less gunas is subtler than the one which has more gunas. That is the point to be noted here that as each product resolves into its karanam, the karanams become more and more subtle. So finally, Akasha is the most subtle. Therefore, all the karanams are at increasing order of subtlety. Are you following the argument?
Yes, Acharya.
is
Each preceding karanam is ascending order of subtlety. This is very important. Why? Because it implies that as the karanams become more and more subtle, sooner or later,
Gunas will go away.
gunas will not go away. They will be incapable of
Yeah.
being observed. Observation will fail. When observation fails, then conclusions cannot be based upon pratyaksha. You understand? You can base a conclusion on pratyaksha as long as observation is available. When observation stops being available, you can still conclude, but based on anumana, inference only. Do you see where I'm going?
Yes.
So when
Yes.
you come to the ultimate cause, it can be only through inference. There is no pratyaksham available for Brahman. And therefore, he says, since what is the logic for this inference? All intermediary causes have existence. Therefore, the ultimate cause must also have existence. Right? Because when you say that Prithvi resolves into Jalam, Jalam exists, it has got existence. When you say Jalam resolves into Agni, Agni exists. When you say Agni resolves into Vayu, Vayu exists. Vayu resolves into Akasha, Akasha exists. Akasha resolves into Maya, Maya exists. Maya exists, Brahman exists, Saguna Ishvara exists. That is the logic for the beautiful little logic which Shankara gives in his commentary. Is there a logical proof which you can arrive at that Saguna Ishvara exists? And he says this is the logical proof. So there is a general rule which you can derive from here. Whenever, and again, the general rule is the Anumanam, okay? Wherever a karyam is destroyed or perishes, the Nama Rupa of the karyam resolves, disappears. But the existence of the karyam continues by getting transferred to the karanam. And this can be intermediate karanam or final karanam. If they're intermediate karanams, at each stage, the existence gets transferred to the previous karanam, preceding karanam, until finally the existence transfers to the ultimate cause, Jagat Karanam Brahman, which shows that Brahman has existence. Okay. Then he points out a very, again Shankara, we don't see this anywhere else. He says, therefore, throughout the Pravilapanam process, throughout the resolution process, you will find that existence exists. Existence exists. But he says, whenever any karyam is resolved, there are two things which you are aware of. The resolution of the awareness of the object is also there, right? Not only the object is there, the difference is very subtle. Not only the object is there. Okay, let me give an example. Supposing we talk about a pot, right? Let us say I'm saying this is a pot. So there are two things always in that knowledge. What is that? There is the object pot which is outside me. But there is a vritti. This is a pot. Pot knowledge. Where is that vritti?
In our mind.
Inside me. Therefore, whenever you talk about any object, and we're talking pot over here, the pot is outside me, but there is also pot vritti, the pot knowledge present in my mind inside me. Both need to be present. Therefore, he extends this to Jagat. The existence of the Jagat, which is outside you, has to be accompanied by the knowledge that this is the Jagat, which is inside you. Right? Therefore, the Karyam, the product, and the Karya Jnanam, the knowledge that product is there, they are always together. Why is this important? Because when the pot is destroyed, remember, again, a very subtle point. When the pot is destroyed, the vritti, this is a pot, also goes away. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Because only as long as the pot is there, you have the thought, this is the pot. Therefore, pot is there, pot vritti is there. When the pot goes away, forget about destruction. Somebody takes away the pot. The pot is gone. And therefore your pot vritti is also gone. Both get resolved. Right? But point, very important point is there. Even though both are resolved, remember the Nama Rupa has gone away. Only the Nama Rupa. Because if, to take an example, the pot is completely destroyed, then the Nama Rupa has gone away, but the existence of the pot, as well as the pot knowledge, has shifted back to the clay. Right? So you, instead of saying this is the pot, you are now saying this is the clay, and therefore there is clay outside you, and there is clay vritti inside you. What are we trying to prove? Namarupa goes away, but the existence shifts back from karyam to karana. Very, very involved argument. Is it making sense?
Yeah, Acharya, that Nama Rupa goes away part is very clear. It's easy to digest, but this that pot, I mean, vritti goes away. This is the pot that. So is it the karyam? Because the pot didn't come from my knowledge. Pot was there even if
Didn't say
I was not there.
this is the vritti is karya jnana,
Okay.
the knowledge of the pot. That is why I said it's very important to understand that concept. When I say this is the pot, there are always two things: one outside me, one inside me. Outside me is the pot. Inside me is this is the pot. This is pot vritti. When that pot gets converted into clay, let's take a
Yeah.
sort of pot, let's take a necklace, it's easier. Okay. When the necklace is melted in front of me, I no longer say this is a necklace. So the
Yes.
object necklace outside me has gone. This is the necklace vritti inside me has gone. What do I now say? I say this
This
is
is
the
gold.
gold. And
Oh.
therefore, that Namarupa necklace is gone. But this is remains in the gold. And therefore, this is necklace has transferred itself into this is gold. The Namarupa has gone. The Namarupa vritti has gone. It has transferred itself into the existence principle of the necklace has been transferred to the gold, or rather gone back to the gold, because it came from the gold only. And you have got a new vritti. This is gold. So what he is saying is this awareness, this idea that the existence continues. Right? This is not karya jnanam. This is not product jnanam. This is astitva jnanam. Awareness of existence. Because remember when necklace has gone, nama rupa has gone, but isness, this is remains. And he says, Shankarak says, this idea that the existence principle, the existence always continues. This is the idea. This is the, a very good example for us to understand the real nature of existence and non-existence. Now that might be confusing, right? Because we have been talking about existence and nama rupa. But Shankara commentary ends up by saying that this example of how the nama rupa disappears, but the existence principle continues. He says this is the way that you should understand Sat and Asat. What
Makes
does it
sense.
mean?
Dependent existence and independent existence
Correct.
or
So
nitya.
Sat refers to Satyatvam, permanent nature of existence. Asat refers to Mithyatvam, borrowed existence. And if any of you have attended the Bhagavad Gita's class, chapter 2, and chapter 2, I think it was verse number 16, where we did an extensive discussion on Shankara Bhashya, on existence. That you should revise. Okay, so fine. So this argument was what? It was based on starting with Karyam and going backwards to Karana. So all this is beautiful commentary. Okay, you won't find it anywhere else. Now Shankara gives another argument, and this is he reverses it. The argument so far, we took the product, the karyam, and traveled backwards to the cause, the karan. So here he says, let us start from the karanam and then see what we can do. Right? So he reverses it. Instead of starting from product, he starts from karanam. So there's what is known as a abhyupetyavada, suppositional argument with an assumption. Right? So assumed argument. Abhyupetyavada is Sanskrit word. So what is the assumption? He says, let us assume that Brahman does not exist. Asat. It's a assumption, right? Let us assume that Brahman does not exist. Therefore, the cause is non-existent. Now there is a Vedantic rule. Karana gunaha karye anuvartante. I hope you guys remember from all sort of discussions we had. Karana gunaha karye anuvartante. Means what?
The gunas of cause goes to the product.
The gunas of the cause will be inherent in the product. Right? Do you see? If you assume that Brahman is not existing, asat, then that non-existence, which is karana gunaha, should be inherent in all its karyams. Therefore, you should not exist, nor should the computer in front of you. Therefore, if you are looking at, let us say, the glass in front of you, and you assume this, that Brahman is asat, which is Brahman nasti. Brahman is not there, right? There is no Brahman. That guna of non-existence should be available in the glass in front of you. So you should be saying that glass nasti. It has no existence. Is it not?
Yes, Acharya. But firstly, we are, can it be like, okay, from Maya only or something else only this glass can come? I'm just getting very illiterate and then arguing or
Whatever
asking
it
this
comes from.
question.
Whatever it comes from, ultimate karanam is what? We just went to the Prabilapanam
Existence.
process.
There must be existence.
Ultimate karanam, upadana karanam for anything in this world is Maya. Okay. That's what we said just now, isn't it?
Yeah, that is our, in the beginning of studying, this is our assumption or that faith in Shastra. Is it like that we are starting with?
Shastra tells you this. I mean, you cannot have anything else. This argument is reversing it. Supposing Brahman does not exist, so you are saying Karanam Nasti. Therefore, that Nasti component, non-existent, should be present in all the products. Whatever you see, you should be able to say this is not there. And therefore, if you are saying that Brahman Nasti or Sagana Ishvara Nasti, there is no Mula Karanam for the Jagat. Non-existence is the guna of that Karanam. Therefore, the entire universe will also be pervaded by non-existence only. What is the effect of non-existence? What is the effect of non-existence?
Pratyaksha Pramanam is
Effect of non-existence is something doesn't exist. Right? Therefore, if the entire universe is pervaded by asat, non-existence, that universe would not exist, and that universe includes us. Therefore, everything would have to be taken as non-existent. And since that does not happen, it is a ridiculous statement to say that the universe does not exist or I do not exist. And therefore, The assumption is wrong. Therefore, you have to say that Brahman exists. Remember, this is one of the very rare mantras. Why? Usually, Brahman is always defined in terms of consciousness, chit. But this is one of the very rare mantras when Brahman is defined as Sat, existence. Of course, there are even rarer mantras where Brahman is defined as Ananda also, which we will see when we come to Taittiriya. Taittiriya Upanishad talks about Brahman as Ananda. So whenever you talk about Brahman as Sat also, you should apply the same five features which you apply to Brahman as consciousness. What are those five features?
I'm not a part, product, or property of the body.
Yeah.
I'm an independent entity which enlivens the body.
Yeah.
I'm beyond time and space-wise boundaries.
Not bound by this.
Not bound
boundaries
of
Yes.
time and space.
Yeah.
But I need a medium for for manifestation.
Yeah.
It still
And
exists.
I think I said all five.
even when it is not there, I continue to exist.
Mm.
Even though the reflecting medium is not there, right? So this you have to apply to Sat also. That we talked about existence. You have to apply to Sat also. So net result here is what? What is your actual experience? Everything exists. And therefore Shankara says that this itself is a way of showing that Brahman exists. Therefore, since Jagat is pervaded by existence, the primary cause, Mula Karanam of Jagat has to be known as existence only. Brahman exists should be known. And therefore, the second part of the mantra is that everyone should know that Brahman exists. Only when you start with Brahman exists, then only will it be possible to inquire into Brahman. Right? Once you inquire into Brahman, then the Atma Jnanam is obtained. And you end up with Aham Brahma Asmi. You have to start with Brahma Asti, then only can you end up with Brahma Asmi. Right? This is what he says. Therefore, when the word Anyatra is used, who else? Shankara says, remember that Anyatra has to be taken as a person who is a Nastika, who does not believe in the Vedas. If you don't believe in the Vedas, you will not come to the starting position, which is that Brahman exists. And if you don't come to the starting position at all, if you don't know that Brahman exists, how will you inquire into that Brahman? And if you don't inquire into that Brahman, how will you ever come to Aham Brahmanasmi? Very, very potent argument. Remember, the catch here is you have to clearly understand that you cannot inquire into something unless you know what that thing is, that that thing exists. Can you give an example of that? How this works in practice?
Yeah, any product it can be. Suppose when we didn't know there is any mobile phone, we didn't have any thought of mobile phone or anything.
So when you didn't know there was a mobile phone, there was no question of inquiry into the mobile phone. Right? Therefore, how did you know there was a mobile phone? Because it's a mobile phone, of course, you knew the pratyaksha. But Brahman is not available for pratyaksha. But the same logic works. Unless you know Brahman is there, Brahman exists, you will never inquire into Brahman. That is the idea here. To inquire into something, you must know that it exists. You will know Brahman exists only through Veda. Therefore, Veda Pramanam. Shastra Shraddha is a must. Without that, you cannot come to Brahma Asti. Without Brahma Asti, you cannot come to Brahma Asmi. There is no question of moksha at all unless you accept Shastram as a Brahma. With this, we'll stop for today. Any questions? Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your
Thank you.
questions. Om Namah Shivaya.
Okay, Raviji, thank you.
Thank you, Ravi.